Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to today's webinar, The Simplicity and Might of Microsoft Forms. My name is Danny Smith, and I'm the Manager of Events and Marketing at Microexcel, and I'll be moderating the webinar today. During this webinar, we will explain how to use it and demonstrate the key functionality of the new Office 365 features, including how you can collaborate and share the forms created, how you can enhance it with pictures and videos, how easy it is to analyze responses with built-in analytics, and much more. Presenting today is Samir Sheath, who leads our managed services team at Microexcel with 5 years of experience in the Office 365 space. Just a few laundry items before we get started. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be sent out in a few days. Also, we will have a Q&A portion at the end, so please type any questions you may have in the questions box, and we will get to those in the order they are received. If you have questions after the webinar, please feel free to contact us at info@microexcel.com. To demonstrate the functionality of what we are showing you today, we will be conducting our post-webinar survey through Microsoft Forms. Please watch out for an email with a link to the survey. So without further ado, I'd like to present our speaker for today's event, Mr. Samir Sheath.
Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar. As Danielle said, today we're going to be talking about one of the newest Office 365 features called Microsoft Forms. Again, my name is Samir Sheath. I'm the Managed Services Lead here at Microexcel for the past 5 years. I've been working primarily in the Office 365 stack. My contact information is on this slide here, so feel free to contact me or info@microexcel.com for any questions. Just a little bit overview on Microexcel. Microexcel is a solutions provider that was established in 2001. Our key practice areas are Microsoft, SAP, and QA. We are one of the few cloud solutions providers, but from Microsoft, and we are also Microsoft Gold partners. So right off the bat, what is Microsoft Forms? So Microsoft created this feature in Office 365. It's a simple, lightweight app that lets you create quizzes, polls, surveys, and other such things. So you can see as an example here, there's a small one-question survey I created. What does everybody want for lunch today? Chipotle, Five Guys, or sushi, And you can add n number of questions or n number of answers, which I'll be showing you a little later in this presentation. Right now, we're going to start with a little poll question. I just want to, gauge the room, see, what products do you use to manage your digital forms and your surveys? Are you using Adobe, SharePoint, Power Apps, any other service like SurveyMonkey or Google Surveys? Or if you don't need no stinking forms, then you don't need them.
Okay, Samir, I will now be closing the poll. And it looks like we had 50% answer with SharePoint, 45% answered with others, and 5% answered with forms. I don't need no stinking forms.
Okay, great. So it seems like the vast majority of you guys are using something to collect data from either outside people or internal employees. That's great. So now I'll be going into some of the key features of Microsoft Forms. The first one, it's the intuitive UI. And anybody who's using Office 365 now knows Microsoft is all about their intuitive UI. So for Microsoft Forms, they've created this really robust but very simple user experience to create, edit, and share forms. As you can see, I had 2 sample surveys here. One was for lunch, and one is this webinar going well? That one has 0 responses, so that's not so great. So what I'm going to do for you guys right now is I'm going to go into the actual UI, and I'll create a sample form for you to see how the question and answers both work. So you can see the URL here is forms.office.com, very simple, and this is the page that you see when you first log in. So right now we're going to go and create a new form. So you can create a title very easily. I'm going to make something that says, where does everyone want to go on vacation? great survey. I'm sure a lot of people want to go to a lot of places. You can enter in a description here that you want. You know, please keep in the United States or anything kind of like that. So when you want to add a question, there's 5 choices that Microsoft gives you right off the bat. There's a choice question, a choice option, a text option, a rating option, a date option, and a ranking option. So if we go for the choice option, you can say, very simply, where does everyone want to go? Option 1, you can say something like, California. Option 2, you can make Hawaii, and so on and so forth. You can create n number of options. You can go crazy. Okay, some people maybe want to go to Italy. Some people maybe want to go to Spain. So this is the choice option right off the bat with Microsoft Forms. And as you can see, you can add, keep adding options. You can add an other option in which users can write in their own response as well. You can also here toggle if people can answer multiple answers. So if you want to go to Hawaii and Italy, great. You can select those options. You can also make this a required question, to make sure that they have to answer it, because obviously if this is what you're asking for, you want to make sure people are answering. So now another option is the date. So you can say, okay, now that we're asking where does everybody want to go, we can ask them, when do you want to go? When do you want to go? And you can simply have the answer, have them input a date from their calendar. They can type it in, stuff like that. Also important, you should make this a required question. You can also have a rating where you can say, how does everyone feel about California? And you can either have it from levels 5 to 10, and the symbols are either numbers 1 through 5 or a star 1 through 5, and they can select how they feel, strongly about California. Another interesting one is the ranking. So the ranking, you can say we can use the same question we used above, where let us know your top option for vacation. Again, here we can put the same items, California, Hawaii, Spain, and Italy. And once you save it, if I go back to my forms, if I go back to where does everyone want to go on vacation, you can rank, users will be able to rank which one they want from top to bottom. And this also, you can make these required or not required. So that's sort of the UI. Like I said before, Forms is very lightweight, very simple, but Microsoft wanted to make it in a UI that's very, very easy to use for anybody who wants to create a survey or a form. Another key feature is mobility. So if you want to create a simple form, you should make it even mobile users should be able to access, fill out, or even edit the form. So what Forms did is that they created a preview option within the Forms portal, so you can see how your form would look like in either a computer view, a browser view, or a mobile view. So if I go back to my form here, and I go to where does everybody want to go on vacation, I can click on this preview link at the top, and it'll show me right now what it looks like in a browser view. Or I can click on mobile, and I can see what it looks like in a mobile view. This helps you in that, so that your questions aren't too long, or your choices aren't too long, that they wrap around, or you lose some of the visual stuff that you want in a form. Very easy, very lightweight. You want to make sure people can just look at the form on their phone, fill out their questions so you can get your responses, because the most important part about these surveys are the responses. Another key feature is the reports and analytics. The results are compiled in real time, and the results can be exported to Excel pivot tables for any further analytics. Anything that you export to Excel, you can save it as a CSV, import it into Power BI if you have a complex survey, and do even deeper analytics that way. So I have my form here, not this one. I sent this one out to a couple of my colleagues. As you can see, I have 8 responses. So if I go into the questions tab, I see my 2 questions. What does everybody want for lunch today? What time does everybody want to eat? Choose all that apply. The red asterisk means that it is a required answer. So obviously I had both these questions be required to answer, and I have 8 responses here on this responses tab. So here I can see how many people answered for which choice. 6 people wanted to do it at 1 o'clock, 4 wanted at 12:30. I guess 11:30 a.m. is a little too early for lunch for some people. It shows you the average time, how long it took for the end users to complete the survey. And if you want to go a little deeper and see it person by person, you can click on this view results, and you'll get each responder. So this is 8 responders, so I can run through my list of responders and see exactly how they answered and how long it took them to answer. And I can flip through and go through each one to sort of cater my results and see what each individual wants instead of just seeing, a graph full of numbers. So, again, very simple to go through the responses, very easy analytics. You can click on this open in Excel, and it'll open it into that chart as I told you. So I'll just open this so you can see what the responses will look like. So you can see it comes in a nice chart. The filtering is already applied. You can filter the results by the user or the choice, anything like that, and it'll give you their name and email address and everything. So Microsoft Forms gives you really, really great functionality in not only getting the results, but interpreting the results as well. One more key feature is a wide audience. So even though Microsoft Forms is a feature of Office 365, you can send forms to any user. I can go into the sharing, and anyone with the link can respond, or only people in my organization. You can create an HTML link, a QR code, or even send it as an email. You can share it as a template. You can share it to collaborate. Let's say if you have a survey between 3 people that you're creating, you can share that survey to other people so they can make changes and also view the results. So if I go into my form here, let me go back. I want to share this, where does everybody want to go on vacation? So I simply click on share. I can either copy the link, generate the QR code, embed it, or send the email link that'll open up in my Outlook. I won't do that right now. You can see that. So if I go here, this is where you get anyone with the link can respond. This means anybody who gets it can respond, or anybody in my organization can respond. There is one caveat to this, though. If you select anybody in my organization can respond, obviously they will have an Office 365 username and password, so you won't need to actually put their name in the survey. Their name will get populated with their login name. If you select the option anybody with a link can respond, unless you have a question specifically asking for their name will not get input. So if I go into this, where does everybody want to go on vacation? I would add a question here with text saying, please enter your first and last name, and then make it a required answer so you'll fetch that data, and then you'll be able to understand how each person is responding. This is only if you're doing it anonymously. If you're logging in with your Office 365 username and password, it will take those details. So that's just one little caveat that's important to realize how you're sharing your forms. Another big question that we got when Forms first came out is, will Microsoft Forms replace InfoPath? And right off the bat, no. Forms is not a replacement for InfoPath, and most likely will never be. So all of us who are using on-premises SharePoint knows InfoPath is used for very complex forms, and in order to enable very complex workflows, some automated workflows within your environment. As I said before, Forms is very lightweight. It is merely a data collection tool in the form of surveys, quizzes, and things like that. What you want to look for in InfoPath, the replacement Microsoft is coming out with is Power Apps. So now with Office 365, Microsoft is moving into this app model, where you would create an app, and within that app, you'll create your custom form with all your custom workflows. There is integration. There's heavy integration between Power Apps and Flow. Flow is Office 365 version of workflows, which we can talk about at a different time. So right off the bat, can't stress enough, Forms will not be replacing InfoPath. Some of the key differences right now is that there's no offline version of Microsoft Forms. You must have an internet connection. You must have an Office 365 subscription in order to at least create forms or access the Forms page. Forms, as I said, Forms is not available in an on-premises SharePoint environment. It's only offered through Microsoft Office 365 services. What you can see Forms as, Forms will be a direct replacement for SurveyMonkey, Google Surveys, or other such things. If you already have a lot of businesses that I talk to, a lot of businesses out there, they're utilizing Office 365, but they're also paying for these third-party subscriptions for SurveyMonkey and so on. And Forms is a feature that is coming to all Office 365 tenants. So this can be seen as an added cost savings. So right now, as I mentioned before, Microsoft Flow is the Office 365 version of workflows, very simple workflows in terms of forms, but it can grow more complex when working with Power Apps. So you can see here, the integration right now is a little limited because the Forms is a new service that Microsoft is coming out with. So right now, it's very cause and effect sort of relationships. Okay, email me if somebody gets a response, record the responses in SharePoint, notify the team. If you're using Microsoft Teams, you can notify your team when survey responses are filled in. An email notification for the responses, or record those responses into a Google Sheet, things like that. There's a link here that I will also share with you that has more of the connectors. This was just a little appetizer, so to speak. But as I said before, yes, the connectors are very limited right now. But since Office 365 is Microsoft's growing service, those services will also be growing as well. So more importantly now, I've talked about the functionality of Forms and what you can do and how you can see the data. But now it's important to know who can use Microsoft Forms. So right now, Microsoft Forms is generally available in all the Office 365 education licenses. So, Education, Education Plus, E5, anybody who had the E3 licenses, the E3 education licenses prior to their retirement will also be able to get Microsoft Forms. Right now, what we're using, Microsoft Forms is available in preview. So Business Essentials, Business Premium, Enterprise E1, E3, and E5 plans. And like before, if anybody was using the old E4 plans, the E4 business plans before they got retired, they will also be able to use Microsoft Forms. So right now, we're going to go into our second poll question. If you don't have Office 365, would you be interested in a trial of Office 365 and Microsoft Forms? Either you already have it, you're using Forms, if you're interested in a trial, or no, not right now. Maybe you're evaluating some other options.
Okay, Samir, I'll now be closing the poll. And it looks like the results are 63% answered with I already have Office 365, 11% are already using Forms, and 26% said not now, thanks.
Okay, so that's good. So it seems like a lot of people are using Forms. You're obviously already understanding the UI, so that's great. For those of you who are using Office 365 but haven't utilized Forms yet, you can check whether or not this is available in your tenant. It should be. If not, it should definitely be coming soon. So this is a great tool for a lot of inter-office things that take emails to go through, picking very mundane things, or even higher up decisions that take email chains, and email chains can be very simply done in a simple Microsoft form. You send it out, collect the results, and then make an informed decision that way. So right now we will be going into a Q&A session. So if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the chat box, and Danny will relay them to me.
Thank you, Samir. It does look like we have had a question come through during your session, and that question is Microsoft Forms available on-premise?
So as I said before, and I answered in the slide, Microsoft Forms is strictly an Office 365 service. So right now there's no on-premises version of Microsoft Forms, and most likely there won't be. Microsoft, obviously, as all of us know, is moving heavily into their cloud space. So they're building all these features only to be used in Office 365.
Thank you, Samir. The next question we've had come through is, can I create a printable version of the data captured on the form?
Yes, absolutely. So as I showed before, if I still have it open, yes. So when we go into our form here, let me go into the other one. If I go to my responses, I can simply open this file in Excel, and then it'll open up like this, and you can make this printable. The great thing about this Excel export is that it allows you for even further analytics, like I said. Right now, this is a 2-question survey, but you might have a survey or a quiz that's 25 questions, or maybe even 30 questions. So for that, if you export it to Excel, save it as a CSV, you can upload this into your Power BI and make some really cool dashboards and do a lot of deeper analytics. But yes, once you export it to Excel, it's completely printable and shareable.
Thank you, Samir. The next question we have is a 2-part question, and that is, can you have an anonymous survey, and can people respond anonymously?
Yes. So as I showed before, in the form, if I go into share, you can share anonymously. So this link is an anonymous link. The only way that you will know who is answering that question is if you explicitly ask for their name in the survey. So if I add a text question here saying please enter your name, that's the only way that you will know who is actually answering the question. So if I just sent out these 2 questions to anonymous users, the results would come back anonymous. So it's great. You can even use this. That's a great point, because you can even use this for sensitive questions. If you want to ask, some hard business questions, you can simply send this out. Employees can answer the questions completely anonymously. If you enable the sharing and say anyone with a link can respond, unless you have a question explicitly asking for their name, the results will come back anonymous.
Thank you, Samir. The next question we've had is, can external sources such as SharePoint lists, AD, .xlsx, etc., be connected to and from within a survey or form?
Right now, that functionality is not there. That is something that Microsoft is working on, but right now this is their bare bones sort of Forms preview, so that feature is not yet available in Forms.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, are there unlimited questions and unlimited answer options per survey or poll?
There is a limit to, I think you can only have maybe 50 choices in a given answer, in a given question. So obviously you're not going to be creating a question that has 50 answers. So you can say that it is unlimited. Yeah, there's no such hard limit that way. I mean, there is a hard limit, but I'd be very hard pressed to find somebody who reaches that limit. You can create n number of questions. You can keep, add option, add option, add option. You can keep going. Right now, I haven't seen any such limitation because I haven't seen any surveys grow that large.
Thank you. The next question is, what languages are supported by Microsoft Forms?
So right now it is the basic languages. Right off the top of my head, English, Spanish, Italian, French, German. I believe the Chinese characters are also available. But as we know in Office 365, all the language packs are getting updated to the system regularly. So full functionality for all the languages that Microsoft allows in Office 365 will be available in Forms. But for now, it's just those big ones.
Okay. The next question is, can you use Microsoft Forms as a checklist for smaller projects?
I guess it would depend on how you phrase the question. But so the thing with Microsoft Forms is a response. You're really looking for the responses. So you can maybe, if you're working on a project, you could send out a checklist to all the users. Create a question. which tasks are finished, or which tasks are you still working on, and then compile the analytics that way. It really depends on how you phrase the questions and how you phrase the answers. So I want to say yes, absolutely. You can create somewhat of a checklist to say, and then send it out, and then your colleagues can check mark or enter in what they finished, what they haven't finished, things like that. The forms are very fluid. It all depends on how you phrase the question and phrase the responses.
Okay, thank you. The next one is, will forms have a question type that mirrors the SharePoint rating question type? That is, each choice can be rated using a single question.
Right now, that functionality is not there. I'm not aware of if they're bringing on that functionality. I would be surprised if they didn't. As I said, right now, Forms is only in their preview, so they're constantly adding features to it. We'll have to check back and find out, but I don't have that information currently.
Okay. Our next question is, do you know when this will be in the government cloud?
Right now, Microsoft hasn't said anything about when they're going to be moving it into the government space. They are up to code on a lot of things, a lot of compliances, but as we all know, getting up to speed with the government compliance is a little tougher. That is usually the last thing to come in a lot of these Office 365 services. As of right now, there's no timetable, but it will be coming to the government space, yes.
Okay, great. The next question is, they have Office 365, but whenever they try to access Forms, it won't load and just simply states loading. Any idea why Forms won't load for me in my Office 365 portal?
That's interesting. You could check maybe your IE settings. The best way to sort of diagnose that is probably to open up a ticket within Microsoft in your admin panel and tell them, why can't I access Forms? Forms, you might have the URL and you might have the link, but Forms might not actually be deployed into your tenant as even the preview. Obviously, they do things tenant by tenant or groups of tenants at a time. So it might not have hit. You might see the Forms preview option, but it might not be fully deployed to your tenant. That's the question Microsoft will be able to answer for you 100%.
Okay, Samir, the next question is, can I add which answers are correct? Isn't that the nature of a quiz? I want to provide feedback at the end.
Yes. So as I see, I created a form and I created a quiz. If you add a question, but you will only see the right answers or the wrong answers. So as you can see here, if I create option 3 here, you can mark which one is the correct answer. You won't be able to see what is the correct answer if you're giving the quiz. That's only for the creator of the quiz. So what color is the sky? I can say, yeah, it even gives you suggested options. I can say red or, green, blue, and then while I'm making it, I will say, okay, blue is the correct answer. That is only for my eyes as the creator, and you won't be able to see if you answered correctly. As even if you submit your answer, you won't be able to see that that's the right answer until it's all finished and the creator tells you what's right and what's wrong.
Okay, the next question is, since Microsoft Forms is currently offered in preview mode for business users, what will happen to the Microsoft Forms created in preview mode when Microsoft Office releases Microsoft Forms into Office 365 production environment?
I'm sorry, Danny, can you repeat the question, please? I lost you a little bit.
Sure, that's fine. The question is, since Microsoft Forms is currently offered in preview mode for business users, what will happen to the Microsoft Forms created in preview mode when Microsoft releases Forms into the Office 365 production environment?
So you won't lose any of your data. All that data will stay there. In terms of what the preview is that they want their users to sort of use Forms and see if it's a viable sort of business product. There's not going to be sort of a migration process or a patch process. They're simply just going to release forms, and all your forms will stay there just as they are. You can make all these forms will be here once the forms is put into the full production model. So you don't have to worry about losing any of your data or any of your responses. I will say deleting the forms is it's a hard delete. So if I want to delete this quiz, it'll delete all the responses as well. So this is something you have to be very careful of. If I click delete in here, I will lose all my responses. Same thing for my lunch survey here. If I click on delete, there's no, delete quiz, save responses. They don't have those options yet. I assume that they will have those options in the full version of forms, but as a preview, they're just showing you how to create the forms and the quizzes. So if you're using the forms preview, just be careful that if you do delete your form and you have a lot of responses, unless you exported those responses into Excel, you will lose those responses.
Okay, and the next question is, if the AD account of the Microsoft form creator is deleted, will the original Microsoft form still work?
If that user has shared the form with you, then those forms will work. As I said before, if you share the form and collaborate it, and there's 3 people who have access to that form, then you will still have access to that form, even if only one person actually created it. If that user account is deleted and he had a bunch of forms under his account, I believe, like all the things in Microsoft in Office 365, the forms will stay active for about 30 days. If not, then they will be completely deleted.
Thank you, Samir. The next question is, so if we wanted to use forms, is it just a matter of turning the option of forms on in Microsoft 365?
So it's a mixture of things. You can turn on the option, but it all depends on whether or not Microsoft has deployed forms to your tenant. As I said before, they deploy them in multi-tenant sort of bursts. So a couple thousand will get it 1 month, and then another 1,000 the next month. So you like that other question, you might even see forms available in your tiles or as a feature in your tenant, but it might not be completely deployed. That is something for absolute clarification. It's definitely better to reach out to either Microsoft themselves or your managed services representative, and they can either find that information from you. There's no, obviously Microsoft doesn't come out with their schedule on who's going to get what when. It's kind of you wait and see. You could turn on that feature and you might get it, or you might not. It's something that you would have to reach out to Microsoft for full clarification.
Great. The next question is, how is the test function used?
So forms first came out, Microsoft came out with forms first and foremost for the education space. So the education space, obviously, in my slide before, if I just go back a little bit, forms is generally available in all the education tenants. It's only in preview for the business tenants. So Microsoft wanted to create a way for teachers to create these robust quizzes and stuff like that for their students. So that's sort of how forms came to be. And then Microsoft realized how this could be used in the business space and started previewing it in all their business tenants. So the quizzes were mainly for the education space, and the other surveys and quizzes and the survey and polls were part of what they wanted to offer to businesses.
Thank you, Samir. The next question is there any logic? For example, skip to section if answer meets criteria.
Right now, there's no such logic. It's right now, at least it's still in forms is still in its infancy, so they haven't created those kind of logics where if so, skip to this question, things like that. That functionality right there is not available. But as we all know, with Office 365, Microsoft is pushing things pushing new updates. And the great thing about the preview is that you can send notes to Microsoft and they can review them and say, okay, this is a great idea. We should be adding these sort of logics to forms. Let's see how we can deploy it. But as of right now, that particular kind of logic is not available. It's very, very straightforward quizzes, surveys, and polls.
Okay, our next question is, can different answers be associated with different point amounts, or is it limited to one correct answer?
You can have multiple correct, in the quizzes, you can have multiple correct answers. You can either, you can have all of the above, things like that. But you can, there's more than one correct answer to a question in a quiz scenario. In a survey, you can have, answer all that apply, select all that apply, things like that. So there's not just one right answer per question. You can have multiple right answers for a particular question.
Okay. The next question is there any limit for the quantity of creation of forms for each user, and how that vary for E3, E5, Office 365 licenses wise?
License-wise, there's no limitations. These are just the licenses that forms are available to. It's not like the E1 forms will be any more limited than the E3 forms. It's all right off the bat. The same for every sort of license in that list that I provided. I can pull that up again. So yeah, as I said, there's no difference between the E1 version of forms and the E3 version of forms. It's all the same functionality. In terms right now, I haven't seen any hard limit on how many quizzes you can create or surveys you can create for any particular user. That's just not something that I've seen. So I assume it's a very, very high number in that, Microsoft would be very hard pressed to find somebody making that many surveys. I don't necessarily have a number for you, but I can't see any realistic limitation to how many surveys or quizzes you can create.
Thank you, Samir. We've actually had a question come through asking, can you make these slides available to participants for further review? And I was going to say, I will let everyone know that we will send out a recording of this presentation today so that you can watch at your convenience. So yes, you will be receiving a copy of the presentation. Aside from that, the next question is, how is Forms like or unlike Power Apps? And for an organization's forms library for many different purposes, is it better to use Power Apps?
So it really depends on what you're doing with these surveys and quizzes. So with Power Apps, you're building very complex forms. So as I said before, Power Apps is in the future going to be a replacement for InfoPath. InfoPath, as we all know, it's a very complex form building service, a lot of automated workflows, a lot of rigorous, heavy business workflows. That's what you're really using Power Apps for. Flow, you're really only going to be using for simple quizzes and surveys. Like InfoPath is more for the workflows and those sort of things. When you're using forms, you're really interested in the raw, real results. So I can say it depends on what your business is, what your requirement is in order for this particular form. If you need something complex, something that can have a lot of different moving parts, a lot of the things like that other question, a lot of those different sort of logics, you would want to build it around Power Apps. If you just want something simple, you want quick responses, you want an intuitive UI, something not too heavy. That's something that you would be using Forms for. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Samir. And another question is, what are the limitations of the preview version? Can surveys be deployed?
Right now, surveys can be deployed. I only have had the opportunity to use the preview version. I haven't had a chance to use the full version, but these surveys can be deployed live. You can send them out. You can send them across to any anonymous users or any users in your organization. The information on what the difference between preview and the full version, I can get that information out to you guys. It's just more about where it's being deployed. A lot of the features are the same, but it just depends on which tenant it's getting deployed to, which is what I think they're using between the preview and the full version. Not a lot. There's not a lot different, but that's some information that I can give you post this webinar as well.
Thank you, Samir. As there are no more questions, this will conclude today's webinar. A recording of this will be sent to all participants. You will also each be receiving our survey via forms, so please do take a few moments and provide your feedback on today's webinar. In the meantime, if you do have any additional questions, please email info@microexcel.com. Thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thank you all for listening.